Commended for his exquisite falsetto and bright smile, he not only left us with masterpieces as an original member of the Temptations, but also as a solo artist. Born in 1939, Edward James Kendricks spent his foundational years in Birmingham, Alabama, with both parents and 4 siblings. During their youth, growing up in the same neighborhood, Eddie established a lifelong bond with Paul Williams. In 10th grade, Eddie, Paul, and their friends Willie Waller and Kel Osborne formed a doo-wop group named the Cavaliers, with hopes of making it big in the music industry. Performing for community audiences and in talent shows helped them realize that Alabama couldn't offer the profitable life they sought after. As a trio, Paul, Eddie, and Kel packed up and moved to Ohio for greener pastures. They met music business manager Milton Jenkins, who convinced them that much like Birmingham, Cleveland wouldn't provide the success they aspired to. He suggested relocating to Detroit, where a new label, Tamla Records, showed promise. They changed their group name to The Primes, and in a unique twist, Eddie added an S to his last name, creating himself the stage identity Eddie Kendricks. Entertaining wherever they could for financial support, Eddie often crossed paths with Otis Williams, who couldn't help but notice his voice and Paul's choreography. Fatigued by the unproductive cycle of earning small pennies for several months, the Primes headed back to Birmingham. In light of efforts in their hometown once again yielding no progress, Kel left to pursue his own career on the West Coast. Facing a crossroad, Eddie reached out to Otis by telephone, hoping he knew of any lucrative opportunities that may have recently emerged in the Motor City. Simultaneously, Otis was in need of a male singer with a tenor vocal range to complete a group consisting of himself, Melvin Franklin, and Elbridge Bryant. He invited Eddie to join, and Eddie asked if he could bring Paul. They returned to Detroit by Greyhound bus, giving rise to the beginning of the Elgins. After auditioning and signing on the spot under Miracle Records, an imprint with the Motown stable, much like other artists, Berry Gordy ordered them to come up with a more alluring moniker. In 1960, the Temptations were a singing group from Flushing, New York, who recorded 3 back-to-back singles. Upon learning that they recently disbanded after their accomplished lead singer Neil Stevens went solo, the Elgins adopted the name.
Someday you'll hear me calling.
Although much of their initial sound revolved around Eddie's voice, it was Paul who sang on a melody that first drew attention to them locally and in Muskegon and Saginaw, Michigan.
Sometimes you just got to lose. That's when you pay your dues.
Elbridge Bryant was let go from the group after a second altercation during Motown's 1963 Christmas party. He was replaced by newcomer David Ruffin, who was not yet a star but was on the move. It took numerous attempts before they finally scored mainstream success with a Smokey Robinson-written track that marked the breakthrough they were looking for. Smokey then penned a song specifically for David that instantly made the Temptations a household name. Eddie enchanted audiences again when he used his velvet-like pitch on the group's third #1 hit. In a private ceremony, he tied the knot with his girlfriend Patricia in 1965, later becoming parents to his first son. As David sang lead on more chartbusters like Ain't Too Proud to Beg and I Wish It Would Rain, he insisted that he was the primary hitmaker and pushed for them to be rebranded as David Ruffin and the Temptations, similar to a number of name changes that occurred in 1967, including Smokey Robinson and the Miracles and Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. He intentionally arrived to shows late for a grand entrance and skipped rehearsals, claiming he didn't need to practice because he considered himself the best. When the group approached Gordy to vote David out, Eddie strongly advocated for greater loyalty to him and suggested ignoring his outlandish behavior. After tolerating David's misconduct until it became intolerable, they finally replaced him with Dennis Edwards. The 1968 release of Dennis's first hit single with the group carried so much artistic power that it won them their first Grammy. It also presented a facade of unity that masked numerous internal tensions. Paul Williams struggled with alcoholism and depression, which materialized in his personal life and on stage. His frequent absences compelled Eddie to demonstrate his loyalty to his best friend by assuming his role during many performances until Paul retired following recommended medical advice from his doctor. Dissatisfied with the management practices at Motown and feeling the absence of his comrade, Eddie sang lead one last time and then parted ways with the group just before the song's success.
Don't ever let another take her love from me, or I will surely die.
He signed as a solo artist with Tamla Records, now one of numerous diverse subsidiaries of Motown. In 1973, Eddie's solo career took off with a discotheque-style tune that rocked the nation. 3 months later, Paul died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, leaving Eddie in ruins. The victory of Keep On Truckin' was followed by 7 R&B smashes including Boogie Down, Son of Sagittarius, and Shoeshine Boy. In 1975, he and his wife divorced, and 2 years later he welcomed a daughter from a new relationship. Confronting the same pressures from management who now controlled the subsidiary, Eddie finally separated from Motown and its affiliates once and for all, releasing a total of 9 albums on Tamla where he sang about love, disco, and his relationship with God. Enticed by Clive Davis's proven track record, he relocated to New York City, initially signing with Arista, completing 2 albums, and then to Atlantic Records, issuing another. Drawn by a sense of nostalgia, he retraced his roots and moved back to the southern region. In 1982, Motown produced a Temptations reunion album, followed by a tour featuring the 5 current group members plus Eddie and David. During Eddie's performances, it was noticeable that his voice had slightly changed. Attributing it to years of vocal strains, Gordy and fellow performers dismissed it as a result of normal voice wear and tear. In 1983, he independently published his final solo album and then dropped the S that he added to his surname many years prior. David and Eddie appeared with Daryl Hall and John Oates at a Live Aid concert in Philadelphia and at the Apollo Theater in New York City that was subsequently released as an album and on VHS in 1985. That same year, Eddie fathered a 3rd child, whom he named after his deceased friend Paul. Teamed up once again, Eddie and David collaborated, bringing their blend of talent back to the studio. In 1989, at the Temptations' induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony, David, Eddie, and Dennis made plans to record together and go on the road as the original lead singers of the Temptations. Midway through the tour, Eddie began experiencing shortness of breath. During what he anticipated to be a quick checkup, a spot was found on his lungs.
Doctor told me that I had carcinoma.
Unfortunately, the consequences of 3 decades of chain smoking had caught up with him. He declined chemotherapy with the fear of its physical side effects, among other things. In June 1991, David unexpectedly passed away, and Eddie took it pretty hard. To add insult to injury, he was arrested at David's funeral and charged with failing to pay child support for his daughter. It was disclosed that he was notified of a warrant for his apprehension days before. He was released shortly after his bail was posted by Berry Gordy. In late autumn, Eddie had his right lung removed at an Atlanta hospital to eliminate all traces of cancer and was expected to make a full recovery. Dealing with obligations to the IRS and making hefty child support payments, he went back on tour to generate income. In June 1992, nearly 8 months after his surgery, at what would be his final performance, he appeared underweight and heartbroken as he sang Just My Imagination, coping with the reality that the cancer had resurfaced. His voice was screechy, and at one point he broke down and cried.
Running away with me. Ooh, yes.
On September 25th, he was hospitalized for labored breathing. Days later, on October 5, 1992, Eddie Kendricks, the soulful falsetto, the sweetest and silkiest of tenors who had brought us so much musical joy, was gone at the age of 52 from lung cancer. In 1999, Eddie Kendricks Memorial Park was built in downtown Birmingham, featuring a bronze statue of Eddie and sculptures of 4 other Temptations set into a granite wall. In 2019, he was posthumously inducted into the National Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame in Mississippi. Eddie left a wealth of music for people to reminisce through both with and without the Temptations. He will always be remembered for his extraordinary voice, his role in shaping the Motown era, and his ability to successfully transition into a solo artist. Thanks for watching.